Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. It's a little early, isn't it? 1 second. Hello?
Merry Christmas!
Thank you. Well, seems Christmas came early this year. For me, and it's just what I always wanted. A long-lost chapter of the Locust Lake saga, set within the established timeline. Well, boils and ghouls, you're certainly in for some merry mayhem. Seems Doughboy420 has a splatterific Christmas tale for us all, one he likes to call Locust Lake, Journal Entry Number 3, The Christmas Couple. Scott and Diane were a married couple that had been through some problems over the past few years. They had tried to start their own family, but to no effect. So, they began their marriage madly in love. After a few years, they realized that things weren't right. They loved each other, but they weren't happy. They had moved away from their parents and their small little town in Florida. They were approaching their 30s and wanted to set off on their own to begin anew. So, they had moved up to a little town that was nestled along the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. The town was quaint and cute, and everyone seemed fairly nice. They felt it was a good place to call home. It was there that they found some flyers for the newly opened Just a Gosh Darn Camp that wasn't too far away from their home. The camp was having a Christmas event where the cabins would be stocked with wood for their fireplaces, cookies for the guests and for Santa, a candy cane on your pillow, and the stay was half off. The two figured that this would be a perfect opportunity to spend Christmas with each other for a romantic getaway so that they could maybe put a spark back in their marriage. So, the two packed up their things and set off for their Christmas vacation. The road up to the camp was a dirt road that was icy as hell. Scott grumbled to himself and feared that they wouldn't be able to make it up the icy hill. You'd think that the camp would pay to have people come salt the road a little better, Scott said.
Yeah. The roads are bad. Maybe we should go home?
Diane suggested. No, I'm gonna make it up this hill. Hold on just a second, Scott answered, before putting the pedal to the metal and flooring it up the hill. The wheels suddenly caught, and their car shot forward up the hill. Eventually, they made it to the gates of the camp, which were barely plowed, leaving the couple to wonder if this place was actually open or not. But they pressed on anyway and made it up to the camp. The entire entrance was decorated with long strings of Christmas lights, lighting up the snow-covered camp like a Christmas wonderland. It looked more like Santa's village at the North Pole than it did a tiny camp in northern Pennsylvania. The couple wondered in awe and beauty of the decorations as they made their way into a cabin, hoping that they would be able to get one. They feared with a deal like the one that was offered, people probably jumped at the opportunity.
Hello, how can I help you?
The kind old woman behind the front desk asked. Hello, Scott said. We'd like a cabin, please, he continued.
Oh, of course,
the woman said, ringing them up for their stay.
That's a great price for a stay at a place like this. This place is beautiful,
Diane said.
Why, thank you very much. We spent a lot of time decorating it,
replied the woman behind the counter.
Are there many guests here? To be honest, I'm surprised we got a cabin,
Diane said with a little laugh.
Oh no, not really. Only one other cabin is taken, and that is the one right on the lake. So that's the only one not available. Other than that, the choice is yours,
the woman answered.
Wow, really?
Diane asked.
Well, how about the one up the hill there?
She inquired, pointing out the window to a cabin that sat up in the woods a bit, but it still had a beautiful view of the lake.
That'll do just fine.
The woman smiled, adjusting the glasses on her face. She gave them the key and they returned to the car to go up to the cabin. After unloading all of their things, the two settled in for a Merry Christmas in the new, glorious surroundings. Scott stocked the wood stove to warm the cabin, and the two cuddled to keep warm in the meantime.
This place is great. I'm glad we came,
Diane said with a smile. Me too, babe. I really like it here. Scott smiled, hugging her close and giving her a kiss on the forehead. Suddenly, the two were startled by a knock at the door. Scott got up, completely confused as to who would be knocking right now, especially since it was just starting to get dark out. He answered the door to find a middle-aged, balding man standing there with a flannel coat, his wife standing next to him with a white coat. "Hey there, neighbor," the man said, with a bit of a southern accent, offering a hand for a shake. Hi?" Scott said, shaking the man's hand. "I'm Steve, and this is my wife, Karen. We're camped down the road by the lake, so for the next few days, we're like neighbors," the man said happily. Nice to meet you," Scott said, a bit weirded out by the guy's enthusiasm.
Who is it, Scott?
Diane asked from inside. "Oh, I didn't mean to disturb you or interrupt or anything," Steve said. "You didn't. We're just," Scott said, before he was interrupted by Steve once more. "You have a Merry Christmas. What did you say your name was?" Steve asked. "Scott. And that's my wife, Diane," Scott answered. "Well, Scott, it was nice to meet you. The wife and I just wanted to say hello, but we gotta get going back to the cabin. You have a good night, and once again, Merry Christmas," Steve said with enthusiasm. Thanks. Merry Christmas to you too," Scott said, before closing the door and walking back to his wife with an odd look on his face.
Who was that, honey?
Diane asked. "It was the people camped down by the lake," Scott answered. Steve and Karen. They just wanted to say Merry Christmas," he continued.
Well, that's nice of them,
Diane said. "Yeah," Scott said. "But that guy just had way too much energy," he added. The two of them shared a laugh, discussing their enthusiastic neighbors, and they cuddled up again to get a little more comfortable. After about an hour or so had passed, the couple were sharing a bottle of wine when they were suddenly startled by another knock on the door. Only this time, it was like a pounding knock, harder, more frantic. Scott jumped up a bit angered by the disturbance, and he quickly answered the door, where a terrified and blood-soaked Steve stumbled through the opening, slamming it shut and locking it tight behind him. Diane screamed in fear at the sight of the blood-covered man. Shut up! He'll hear you," Steve said in a panic. He appeared twitchy and confused, and Scott assumed that he was on drugs or something. That would explain the energy that he had during their previous encounter. "Hey man, relax. Calm down," Scott said. "Just tell us what's going on," he said, holding out a hand to try and calm the man. He killed her! He fucking killed her! He killed Karen!" Steve stuttered out in fear, wiping more blood from his face.
Who did?
Diane asked, wide-eyed with fear. Then, the three were startled by the sound of smashing glass as the eviscerated body of Karen was thrown through the window. Steve screamed and cowered in fear against the wall, trying not to look at the corpse of his wife. It was then that the wide, beastly figure burst through the door. He was covered with frost and snow, but he wore all black aside from a tan-colored coat that hung down past his waist, and over his head was a black hood with a rope stitched across the face to make a twisted smile, along with an X cross-stitched over one eye. Scott scrambled and attempted to hit the beast of a man with the broken piece of the door frame that had fallen to the floor, but this had no effect. The man just backhanded him with his large hand, sending Scott flying against the wall with a loud thud. Diane screamed as the butcher of Locust Lake then advanced towards Steve, whom was directly in front of him, and this was followed by the man with the stitchwork mask, grasping the burning handle of the wood stove with his bare hand, causing his flesh to melt and sizzle before he pulled it open and shoved the poor screaming man headfirst into the stove, stuffing as much of the flailing man's body into the opening as he could, burning him alive within before returning his attention to Diane on the bed. Diane screamed and crawled backwards against the wall, kicking her feet at the grasping hands of the butcher in a desperate attempt to fight him off. Suddenly, the beast was stunned by a large shard of glass being driven into the side of his head, a shard of glass held in the hand of Scott. The large man stumbled backward a bit, reaching up to pull the piece of glass out of his head, pulling the dark, coagulated blood out along with it. Diane and Scott stumbled for the door, not even bothering to grab their coats. They attempted to get to the car, but the key was still inside the cabin, so they ran for the main cabin instead, hoping and praying the whole way that they would have a way to fight off this beast, maybe a gun or something, or a car for them to escape in. The two stumbled through the door, out of breath.
He killed him. There's been a murder. Call the police.
Diane yelled in panic.
What? What are you talking about?
The woman behind the counter asked. Suddenly, once again, the monstrous man came barging through the door as if it were only paper in his way. The door shot forward, knocking Scott and Diane forward and out of harm's way for the time being, but the woman at the desk was not so lucky. She was right beside the door and thus right beside the man with the stitchwork mask. The masked man reached over the desk and gripped the woman about her throat before pulling her over the desk's top and slamming her onto the ground before him. He then grabbed the nearest item that he could find, a heavy bag of rock salt used to melt the ice around the cabins, and he then used it like a hammer, slamming it down onto the woman's head so violently that the bag burst open, and so too did the woman's head beneath it. A large man then came stumbling out of the back room, wondering what all the commotion was about. This resulted in the beastly figure retrieving a snow shovel from beside where he had retrieved the rock salt, and he then proceeded to drive it full force into the man's stomach, splitting him in two and allowing his innards to spill out onto the cabin floor. This bought Scott and Diane enough time to gather themselves and sneak out the back door, behind the attacking butcher. The two of them were a bit bloodied and broken, but they were still in one piece, which couldn't be said for everyone. Quickly, the duo ran back to their cabin, which was now filled with smoke and the smell of burning flesh. Scott and Diane retrieved their coats, and along with them, their keys, and swiftly made it back to the car. The beast wasn't far behind them, and Diane watched in terror as he approached them, Scott trying desperately to get the car started.
Hurry up, Scott, he's coming.
Diane yelled in a panic. I'm going! Scott said, fumbling with the keys and sticking it into the ignition to start the car. The two of them sped off, clipping the man with their car on the way past him. Luckily for the couple, they made it out alive. They were one of the few people ever that were lucky enough to escape the clutches of Casper Stoical. The story has a happy ending, though. Turns out that the shared near-death experience was a great way to drive people closer together. They had a Merry Christmas, happy to be alive. And finally, Scott and Diane were able to conceive a child. But things weren't happy for everyone. The local townspeople once again blamed the deaths on normal circumstances. In this case, a mixture of drugs in the case of Steve burning to death, and a bear attack for the rest of the victims. But it didn't matter if they wanted to admit it or not. The camp was still cursed.
Well, I'm sure glad that present came early, unlike the items I purchased from Amazon. Now there's a real horror story for you. But if it's blood and guts and all the other Christmas joys that you crave, I skate back over this way again next weekend, and until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.